Hi, this is Miss Lamb here to explore The Great Gatsby through a Marxist lens. Written and set during the 1920s, a time when capitalism was in its heyday, The Great Gatsby doesn't just celebrate the extravagant lifestyle it portrays. Instead, it reveals capitalism's dark underbelly through the unflattering characterization of its wealthiest members. However, while Fitzgerald's novel is a scathing critique of American capitalist culture and the ideology that promotes it, a Marxist reading reveals that it fails to push its critique far enough, falling prey to the very ideology it seeks to undermine. One of the most effective ways The Great Gatsby criticizes capitalist culture is by showing the destructive effects it has even on those who are its most successful products. It does this through the representation of commodification. A commodity has value not in terms of what it can do, use value, but in terms of the money for which it can be traded, exchange value, or in terms of the social status its ownership grants, sign exchange value. Commodification, then, is the act of relation to people or things only in terms of their exchange or sign exchange value. Tom Buchanan epitomizes commodification in The Great Gatsby. He is the wealthiest man in the novel and relates to the world only through his money. His marriage to Daisy is an exchange of social status for wealth and power. He acquires Myrtle and other lower-class women for his affairs, attracting those most desperate for the social significance he is selling. One of the ironies of commodification is that it creates desire even as it fulfills it. So even though Tom sits atop the pyramid of success in the novel, he becomes increasingly insecure about the one type of social status he can never buy, having been born in the East. Coming from the Midwest, from Chicago, but going to school at Yale in New England, Tom would have been acutely aware of his social inferiority, and so he conducts affairs with lower-class women who are in awe of his position in an attempt to convince himself that he is wealthy and powerful enough to do whatever he wants without consequence. An outgrowth of Tom's commodification of people is his ability to cruelly manipulate them to get what he wants. This is because commodification sees people, and not just objects, as things whose importance lies only in their benefit. Tom unapologetically lets Myrtle think he'll marry her, and he sacrifices Gatsby to George Wilson. Despite how awful Tom is, it's important to realize that Daisy isn't innocent of this mindset either. First, she wanted Tom's sign exchange value as much as he wanted hers. Her affair with Gatsby is also based on a commodified view of life. She was only interested in him as long as she thought that he came from a similar social position. As soon as she found out the truth of his background, she too was willing to cruelly sacrifice Gatsby for her own convenience. The Buchanans' commodification of their world stands in stark contrast to the people who live in the Valley of Ashes. Ashes are what's left over after something is used up or wasted, and that area, consistently depicted as gray and deadened, is home to a lower socioeconomic class. People like George Wilson, who work hard to come by what they have earned, are portrayed as helpless and hopeless. Their only value stems from their usefulness to people like the Buchanans. A close examination of J. Gatsby, the character who seems to most clearly represent the American dream, reveals the corrupted side of his rise to glory. He seems to only value his wealth and possession as status symbols. While the Buchanans use their possessions and have use value from it, Gatsby only uses his simple bedroom. He doesn't use his library or pool, doesn't drink alcohol, and barely knows any of his party guests. He only wants his lifestyle for its sign exchange value, to impress others and raise his social standing. Gatsby's commodification is also linked to cruel ambition. His wealth comes from illegal activities, including bootlegging, and he is closely connected to organized crime through Meyer Wolfsheim. Though the novel seems to openly critique the ostentatious lives of the characters, it fails from a Marxist perspective in two key areas. Its first and most obvious failing is in its unsympathetic characterization of George and Myrtle Wilson. They represent all the negative stereotypes of the lower class. He's not very bright and she's loud and obnoxious. So instead of sympathizing for the way they are trapped by the failings of a capitalist culture, we disapprove of their choices and lifestyle. The second, more subtle failing is in the language that Fitzgerald uses to describe Gatsby's magnificent wealth, the parties that he throws, and the life that he lives. With lavish description and vivid sensory images, he draws the readers into a world of wealth that most would not want to leave. So while The Great Gatsby does critique the capitalist ideology, it also repackages that ideology for the reader. In the end, Gatsby fails to acquire the American dream, but because the novel unwittingly reinforces the capitalist ideology that it condemns, many readers will continue to invest in it.